Welcome to Doctrine and Devotion, a podcast that explores Christian faith and practice from a Reformed Baptist perspective. My name is Joe Thorne. I'm the lead pastor of Redeemer Fellowship in St. Charles, Illinois, and Jimmy cannot be here today, so we're doing something different, something fun, something cool. I can't say he's better than Jimmy, but he is ginger than Jimmy. It's Matt Henslee, everybody. Say hi, Matt.
What's going on? How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm so glad you get to be on the podcast. We get to hang out and talk. And, we basically text throughout the year, and then we see each other somewhere, like at a convention or something, and that's it. Yeah. But now you're here.
Now we see each other here.
We're gonna have a conversation. It's gonna be fun. Before we get to, well, I don't know. You're so busy because you're a company man. You're so busy at the convention. Yes. I might not get to see you. Yeah. You got stuff to do. But I hope I do get to see you there. New Orleans this year.
Yeah.
Now,
New Orleans?
I mean, I've only been to New Orleans like never. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to do a great job there or, representing Midwestern folk. I don't really know what to think of New Orleans because I kind of understand the South. I kind of understand the Southwest. I kind of understand the Southeast, but I don't know what New Orleans is. It's like its own thing, right?
Yeah, it has phenomenal food, It has phenomenal culture, and some great music. I know that kind of goes with both. Kind of that falls under the culture. They have some great. If you like seafood, I loathe seafood. I hate it, and so it's some of the options that's limiting for me.
Yeah.
But char-grilled oysters, that kind of thing. Jamie Dew at New Orleans Seminary turned me on to those, and I actually will eat those.
Good.
But some of the other stuff, I'm out. Immediately no.
Listen, all I know is I'm gonna eat a lot. I'm gonna get some beads.
Yep.
But I have to find righteous ways to get beads. So I mean, I don't know if I can just preach the gospel and get beads. I don't know what I get to do. I get to argue with people.
We've got an even better idea. Is as soon as you go to the mic and make some kind of an amendment or whatever it might be, Bart's going to start throwing the beads from the stage. That's the
okay.
Plan.
This is good. I can get behind this. Well, listen, if you guys don't know who Matt is, Matt Henslee, also known as the Waffle King, the Radical Runner, he is the associational missionary of Collin Baptist Association and one of the pastors of First Baptist Church, Farmersville. You've seen, if you're a Southern Baptist, you know who he is. I think most people just know. You were in charge of the pastors conference last year at the SBC. Isn't that correct?
Oh yeah,
it
was.
And isn't that why we had like so many ladies there voting on who's going to be the next president? Because like you didn't run a tight enough ship. Is that what happened?
100%. It was a completely and totally my fault. I take all full and total responsibility. That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
See, people don't know, like denominational meetings are either boring or they're dramatic. That's really rarely are they just awesome and fun, right? And if there is awesomeness and fun, it's usually, outside of the event. We're getting into the dramatic years again here with the SBC, with all kinds of internal conflict and whatnot. Yeah. So that's why I've always been thankful for a guy like you, Matt, who is involved and invested, but not you're not a drama mama. You are a gospel-centered, peaceful dude, and I appreciate you and what you do.
Yeah, and that was. I mean, we got to come on and talk about the pastors conference last year. And that was our heart. There was, hey, we know that a lot of business and a lot of drama is coming. Yep. We wanted to take the high road and make everything about the preaching of the word, the worship as we sang, the worship as we preached, pray, all of that, and had an amazing time doing that. And we're going to have another round of that this year with Daniel Dickard, who is doing the pastors conference this year in New Orleans, about, I think, character matters. I can't remember his exact theme, but the same idea, all about the preaching, all about that encouragement that you're going to get from there. Mm-hmm. And his is focusing also on some of the separate groups too, the ladies and, kids ministers, all of that. And so it's doing a great job, and kind of that whole idea of let's just have a day or two where we just worship and encourage one another. And in the conversations that I had during those 2 days, and, cause I worked really hard before it so that I could enjoy it when I got there. I didn't want to have to do a whole lot. And so I got to listen to a lot of the sermons.
That's great.
Enjoyed some of those, or I enjoyed all of the ones that I listened to. I just didn't get to listen to all of them. But sit by different pastors, see people I knew, see people I didn't, hear how they're doing, what's going on at their church. So it's a lot of fun. I'll get to do that this year as a bystander, so that's going to be fun. And but that's what I love about that front end is it's sort of the calm before the storm. Everybody loves one another. We're all singing, we're all praising, all of that kind of stuff. And then the gloves come on, or go off, however you say it. But,
well, if it's an interesting fight, the gloves come off. If it's a sanctioned bout, usually the gloves are on. That's
true.
Listen, so how many?
We do have bylaws and stuff.
I know. I love a good event. I love a good event. I as much of an introvert as I am, I like to be left alone. Don't talk to me. Leave me alone. I do love a good event, a good conference, right? And I don't think that they're all that common, to be honest. I think a really good one, they tend to be rather uncommon. But pulling off a conference is hard. And I know that, you were the guy in charge of the pastor's conference last year, but you had volunteers, people like doing different things, I'm sure. But how many people were at that event? And that's my first question. How many people were at that event? And then I got a follow-up.
Okay. I think, if I remember correct, our high was about 6K, I think was our high.
That's a lot of people, dude. Okay, so
I made them all mad. It was great.
The logistics, if you've never put on an event, imagine the logistics of putting on an event with 6,000 people. And now imagine speakers, lights. I mean, it's incredibly complex. It is absolutely destructive to the soul to put on an event at that scale. And I don't say this as a guy who's had experience doing that. I know people who put on events that big and larger, and I see them the day of, and they are not relaxed. They do not have a chance. They have not arranged it in such a way where they can find moments to sit down. I remember talking to, I can't remember his name now, but he was running TGC back in the day, the early days, when he ran the gospel conference, Together for the Gospel Conference. No, the Gospel Coalition Conference. That's the one.
Yeah.
And he looked like a zombie. He was because he had spent so much time to the buildup. Now that you've done it and you've put together a rather high level conference with a lot of people, is it something that you would do again? Is it something that you want to stay away from? Like, what did you learn through putting on that event?
I learned that it is a lot of work, that it is only going to be as successful as those that you get to help you, because you can't do it on your own for sure. If I could take maybe the fundraising component out of it, paying for it, because that fell completely on me. If I could take that off, I would do it every day. I had so much fun doing, I loved the dreaming side of planning what text we were going to preach, how we were going to break it up. I mean, we got with theologians at Southwestern Seminary, and they helped us break it up with pericopes that we could do in the way we were doing it.
I didn't know they had theologians at Southwestern. When did that happen?
They do have a few. They do, man.
I'm just being funny.
Not really. That's
cool.
But yeah, we did that. And then, the stuff that I didn't have to do that you have to do, the whole getting, because we tried to get pastors from literally all over the country to represent, north, south, east, west, in the middle, all of that. Big church, small church. So some that were close to airport, some that weren't. So we had to navigate that. And I didn't have to do any of that because that was the one thing that we spent money for that I will never regret is we hired an event company that helped on all of that. So I got to offload most of that, the whole logistics side. Then I could focus on what I hated, unfortunately, was the fundraising that fell on me. I think I even asked you for money.
Yeah.
And I asked everybody.
Did I give any?
No.
I didn't think so.
No. Aaron Scarborough did. Friend,
well, yeah. Look at that. Look at you see. He's got plenty of money. They got money down there in Texas.
Yeah, they do.
They got money. He's got his fancy church.
All of that in the conversations. And now, just a quick, since we shared some of my hearts of what we wanted to do with it. At the end, we had a moment where we were turning it over to just some time of prayer. Like we realized that. You've probably preached it before. I don't remember who said it first, but everybody's in a trial, coming out of a trial, or doesn't know it, and they're about to go in one. And so I was like, some of you all have been in the middle of the mess right now, and you're just really struggling, or you just came out of it, and you're about to go in, whatever it might be, wherever this finds you, we want to take a moment to pray. And as we did, a pastor buddy of mine, we found out his wife had just been diagnosed with a pretty aggressive form of breast cancer. Yeah. And so in the moment, it's like that's where plans and what you want to do and all of that kind of takes the back seat. And so we actually brought her up to the stage with him and prayed over them, and then had people that were dealing with something like that, something that's just weighing on them, taking out whatever it may be. And we just had a time of prayer. And just a neat, super great thing is, I think it was about 2 or 3 months later, I get a text from them that she's healed and is doing great. And he's actually now moved to Texas. So we got him out of the land of entrapment and got him to Texas. And so I'm grateful for that. But awesome. That was Aaron Collier and his wife, Krista, and an answer to prayer. So it's just a sweet moment. And all the preaching, all that kind of stuff was wonderful. But it was this time of just dedicated prayer. That hearing some of the testimonies that came out of that was really cool.
It's hard to be flexible, to be led by the Spirit, to be spontaneous when you're dealing with such a high level, all eyes are on me kind of event, just to be honest, right? It doesn't matter whether it's church, conference, or something else. You're kind of risking things, right? From in our perspective, if you're like, well, I'm going to kind of change things up. We're going to try something here in the moment. But I'm so glad that you did. I'm so glad that there are Christians and leaders that say you know what, we've planned this out, but we're going to do something different here because we really see that God is at work. Something's going on. Let's get behind it. And I think that's really cool. It's one of the things that, I've always appreciated about you, Matt, is that you, from my perspective, right, you are all in. Like with your church, you're all in. Like if I'm going to be at my church, I'm going to be all in. If I'm going to be Southern Baptist, I'm going to be all in, right? Now, this doesn't mean that, you're going to be all in the same way that another person is. But for you, at your capacity, at your passion levels, you seem to be a guy that goes all in. And that's why I wanted you to come on the podcast, because I wanted to talk about denominational or convention, if you're going to be uptight and pretend that we're not a denomination for some reason, denominational investment and exhaustion. Because I've been heavily invested at the local level in the past. I've been fairly invested at the national level, and then I've been completely pulled back for a number of years. And now I'm getting back involved at the national level, going each year to make sure that I'm staying on top of things and meeting with people and being a part of the process that we have. Why do you seem to be, and you just correct me if I'm wrong, but why do you seem to be a guy that leans towards investment when it comes to a denomination, when so many people that I've seen in the past, especially guys that are what many would consider successful pastors, like in terms of lots of things are happening, they're not. They're sort of pulled back and disconnected. Why are you inclined to be an investor in a denomination?
The first probably goes back to the personality side. For me, things that I do, I just naturally go all in, whatever that may be. If it was running, it wasn't just running 5Ks. It was the crazy ultra marathons every weekend type thing. You mentioned the waffle deal,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm at 3,700 and something days.
Did you have a waffle
right
today?
Now. Oh yeah. Yeah. It was butterscotch waffle, actually. It was amazing. And, but yeah, every day my wife gets up and makes a waffle. If I'm out of town, I take one from home or whatever. I'm all in on anything. Was raised that way. You don't do anything halfway. So that matters. So that's just kind of part of maybe my DNA, just how I'm wired. But for me, it's also not what I can get out of it, because about all I've gotten out of it has been a lot of work, sometimes a lot of headache, a lot of stress, a few more gray hairs, not as many as you, and that sort of deal. I did have the pastors conference opportunity, but again, that was a ton of work and certainly an honor, but it's also like, hey, congrats, go raise $500,000 in your little tiny church in Mayhill, New Mexico that has never seen $500,000 in its life. So, it's like that. But I also strongly believe in the Great Commission, strongly obviously believe in the Great Commandment. And, for me, when I think of that and think of the SBC, and particularly I see the SBC through the lens of the cooperative program and what we're able to do together, which was, at Mayhill Baptist Church, the church that some that are listening don't realize I'm not there anymore, but I was at Mayhill Baptist Church, serving a church in like a town of 56 people. Our church had grown to, 150, 160 or so, which was great. And on our own, we could support maybe a missionary on our own. And, we couldn't have more staff, all that kind of stuff. But through the cooperative program, we were able to link arms with your church, First Farmersville, where I'm at now, or all the other 40-something thousand churches we have, to be able to send out thousands of missionaries. And we just celebrated the 10,000th church plant, I think just was announced yesterday. They hit 10,000 with North American Mission Board, all the seminaries, all that kind of stuff. So that's a long answer to say I believe in what we can accomplish together. And so whether I have a seat there that's given to me or a seat there that I have to kind of take myself, I just believe what we're accomplishing together matters. And so I just want to be all in that. So I get to do that on the local level now as a DOM or AMS, whatever we're called. And of course at my church, like you said, all in. I believe in what our church is trying to accomplish. And so I'm going to be all in there. And that's what we would want in our members. And that's kind of maybe filtered through how I engage on the national level. We would want our members, and of course the SBC is more than just the pastors, but largely that's who goes to these events. So that's still how I view it, is what would I want from in a church member? They give, they're part of this, they believe in this, they spread the word about this. And so I try to do the same thing in the areas of Houston Astros and the SBC.
Yeah. I mean, it really, I guess it all comes down to, as I'm trying to kind of take everything that you've said and condense it down, it seems to me like you're saying you're invested because you're wired in a way that you are a buy-in guy if you believe in something, but then also theologically, biblically, you believe that God has called not just you and not just your church, but God's people to work together to make disciples. And so one of the best ways to do that, right, is to function together cooperatively. I mean, Baptists have been cooperating together since we came out of the womb in the 17th century, right? Like Baptists, we partner together, we cooperate. And so, and of course, churches have been doing this long before that, but we definitely believe in cooperation, partnering, because we know that the task that God has given the church to do is best carried on by local churches that can pool their resources in order to have a bigger impact. Now, with that comes restrictions and roadblocks, because my church, the church that I'm a part of, we have our own culture, we have our theological identity, all that stuff, and so we have a lot in common with some people, and we have less in common with other people or other churches. When it comes to the SBC, it's a pretty big tent. You have to be a Baptist, right? But it's a pretty broad tent. You can be Reformed or Calvinistic or not. That's whatever. But there are parameters. We have a confession of faith, the Baptist, faith and message. So when you have a broader sort of collection of people and you're starting to work together, there are going to be either you can call them some restrictions, but there are also going to be some exceptions that you have to make that you might not make in your church, but you have to make in the association. And so the question is it worth it to be a part of a big convention? We're the largest Protestant denomination in the world. We have 16 fake members, 16 million fake members. We have about 6 or 5 actual million members, but we're the largest Protestant denomination. Is it worth it, in your estimation, to say, hey, we're going to partner with all of these churches, and there's going to be some people doing things we don't like, and people that are just like us, but we're all Baptists and we all love Jesus, so let's get going? Or would it be better to be a part of a smaller network of churches where you're all in true agreement on all of the issues that matter to you, but you have less resources? I think I know your answer. So, but what is it and why?
Yeah, if I could tell a brief story.
Yeah.
I would share, the value that I received, and I know you called me a company man, and I'm Mr. Southwestern. But my very first class at Southwestern was Evangelism 101, whatever it was, 1301, whatever it was. And I'm going, this was under the previous administration, or now this previous administration. And so I knew it wasn't the most friendly era for people like me. And I walk in and
because
day one,
what's you?
Calvinism.
Yeah, there we go.
Calvinism. Yeah. I was trying to be coy, man. You called me out.
No.
But anyway, like day one, my professor, Dr. Matt Queen, just got in and kind of railed on what I believed and why, we can't extend an invitation because of what we believe and like just kind of went in. And I'm the type in a class and certainly in a seminary, college, whatever, I'm built to question things, but I'll question it through my writing. I'm not going to sit there and have an argument with the professor. I feel like he's there to tell me or she's there to tell me whatever they need to tell me. I can argue when I write. I don't need to argue. But I was so mad. Like I raised my hand and I said, well, tell that to Jim Elliott, whatever. I started saying all the stuff and we kind of went off on one another. And somewhat graciously, he was much more gracious than I was. I'll say that. And we kind of hit the pause button. He said, we're just going to pause on that, move forward, and you and I, we can talk another time. And so we did, had a great, gracious, godly conversation. He listened to my concerns. I listened to his, and he kind of softened his tone. I softened mine. We ended up sharing the gospel together, all this kind of stuff. And now this brother is one of my best friends.
Yeah, that's cool.
We are constantly talking about when I've shared the gospel, what happened. When he shared the gospel, somebody always gets saved. When I do, nobody does because I only find the non-elect. But so we'll share those things back and forth. And so my answer is kind of in that because I see the value. He made me a better evangelist, not because we had differing theological, persuasions, especially when it comes to salvation, but that we found what we were united in, obviously the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the call that both Calvinists and non-Calvinists affirm is that we're supposed to extend that call and give people a chance to respond. And so I found that value there in our theological, this was maybe not minor, but a smaller scope of when you're dealing with, the issues of baptism, that's like core of who we are. So that's one where we would depart. You've got other issues about, religious freedom that some people take a different bent on, where they land on certain things, where that would be a dividing line for them. But it's part of our identity, our mark as a Baptist. And so I see that. And so my answer then is yes, to say, and I think each person and maybe each autonomous church would have to say, here are our railings. Yeah. Here's how far we would go. Here's how far I'm comfortable with. I can't link arms to I would think of it this way. I cannot link arms together with this brother over this, whatever this might be, and then make the cut there, theological triage, whatever it may be, for each individual to be able to say, I still want to get that tent as far as I am comfortable with. And so I think everybody could come to that conclusion. And so for me, I can worship with and link arms with a non-Calvinist and a Calvinist, and I can worship with a Paedo-Baptist, somebody that's baptizing babies. But I'm not going to cooperate to plant a church because that's a clear, distinction that we have between the two of us. And so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, levels of fellowship, right? And I mean, most people are reasonable enough to understand that, there are essentials that determine whether or not we're Orthodox. There are those essentials that determine how we're going to function as local churches, right? Like there are different sort of parameters around which we unite. Okay, so and I agree. I've always liked the idea of working in a big tent because I like being around people like me, but I also like being around people that are not like me. I benefit from that, and so I like the big tent. I know who I am. I know what we're all about. We have our identity. We're not worried about it, but there's even when you agree on that, like to be honest, like we evaluate. We are constantly evaluating who we are in partnership with. And so like, we did that with Acts 29 and we ultimately bailed for a number of reasons. And we shared a lot of that, why we were leaving. Of course, our church understood. And so it's always on the table. Like, are we going to stay Southern Baptist? And so far, I haven't seen a reason for us to bow out. I want to be a Southern Baptist church, even though I think we are way behind on a number of issues that we should. I mean, honestly, as stupid as people think it is, I think the name is incredibly important. I think we need to change the name. Like, I'm big on that, but whatever. But there are issues, right, that are important, that are concerning, and things that we have seen unfold. And so our church was, we were very transparent about what's been going on in the SBC. And what I am always encouraged by are what most of our member churches and messengers do. Like by and large, like when I go to the SBC, every time I've gone to the SBC, which is many, many times, I meet people that are from a completely different part of the country, a completely different church, and like they're cool. They love Jesus. Yeah. They love the mission. They want to make disciples. They're not out there lying about who did what and getting online on Twitter and like just being awful, embarrassing examples of what not to be. I mean, regular great people. So there's this tension, right, about like how much do I want to be involved? Because the more I get involved, the more discouraging it can be. I get discouraged, I get frustrated, or I get angry, or I get depressed. I hate social media because by and large, I just see a bunch of nonsense going on most of the time. I'm rarely encouraged by what I see on that. How do you find a path to navigate through all of the discouraging things? Because you simply can't have, millions of people in one organization and not have mess and sin and just craziness, right? So we're a big convention. There's going to be complications and mess. How do you navigate being all in without being exhausted through the craziness and the discouragement?
Yeah. Step one is be very judicious with your mute button on Twitter. I probably see 5% of the drama and the discouragement and so forth. That's more for my heart.
Yeah.
Because I want to, like, one, I know how I can kind of dwell on those things. I can tend to be more of I seem positive, all of that, but I just know my heart can lean towards pessimism a lot and discouragement. And that's one of the reasons I try to battle that so much. And so I try to fill my feed with the IMB type stuff, the NAM type stuff, all of those kinds of things, to see that, to almost be that reminder. And I've joked before, like if I could be a Southern Baptist for, those 2 days in June and just be whatever the rest of the year, I'm all in. Because it kind of like you said, it's like the rest of the year, it's like we lose our ever-loving mind, at least on social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we get together and we realize how small that really is in the grand scheme of things, because for the rest of the year, most of the pastors aren't sitting there on their keyboards doing X, Y, and Z. They're out knocking on doors or discipling people in their church and preaching the gospel, all that kind of stuff. The vast majority of our churches are healthy, solid. They differ on different areas, whatever it might be, but they're not waging that kind of internet war. And so that is what kind of encourages me, because I know that reality is not social media. Just like, I was talking to my daughter the other day about how, when I post on social media, donuts with dad, I'm posting usually the highlights.
Sure.
I'm not usually saying, hey, my daughter just said I'm a terrible father. Like, I don't usually post that.
Right.
And so we're usually not that honest. We've got maybe some older people on our social media that share too much, but typically we're sharing the highlights. And so it's kind of the same thing for me. Is it's not reality. Just like when I struggle with depression, whatever it might be, I've written about it before to be helpful, but I'm not usually just sharing that because I don't want the sympathy, likes and that kind of stuff. So I'm always careful there. And so I share the highlights. So I also realize on the opposite side of that there are people that spend all day, and you can usually watch the time that they're posting. It's times that they would be in the office, whatever it might be, just waging war on the keyboard with everything that's wrong, like airing their grievances instead of the day they're supposed to do that every single day of the year. And so I've just muted it. So that's one reason, like, I live in this alternate reality that the SBC loves one another and is advancing the kingdom all around the globe, because the reality is, it is. And so we've got missionaries just out the wazoo. I can't remember the number that they just commissioned just a few weeks ago, another commissioning ceremony for that. We've got, the big church planting milestone. And there's issues with all of these. Like, there's things that we can't ever just back up and say, let's just let it run its course. Like, we can never do that. We always have to stay on guard and address those things as they happen. but almost looking for fault and looking for issue that some do, where we'll spend their whole day, searching website after website, sermon after sermon, just trying to tear somebody down. I just don't get it, because I never had the time to ever do that. And certainly the desire, when I was trying to pastor a church. And I caught a little flack because I'm usually Mr. encouraging nice guy on Twitter. And I shared a few weeks ago, like, how do people have time? Somebody had asked, how do people have time to do this? This whole just kerfluffle all day long. And I said, look at their ACP and find out. And for those that are listening in that don't know, that's our annual church profile. And that's where most churches will submit their attendance, their baptism, their giving, all that kind of stuff. The SBC baseball card, that I like to call it. And almost without fail, looking at each of them, what I would find is somebody that's really not pastoring his church. In the sense of, one that comes to mind is had grown it from about 250 down to about 60 with 4 baptisms since he's been there. One of the loudest voices. And I'm like, I don't need to listen to that. It's kind of like the whole, don't take advice from somebody or don't take criticism from somebody you wouldn't take advice from. It's kind of the same idea that I filter some of those a little bit. And so I think there are concerns. And I think that when you get a representative body of all of these churches coming together, of course, it's still a fraction, but generally, and you have that multitude there together, that I think led by the Spirit, following God's word, that 99% of the time are going to come to the right decision. And I kind of trust that process. And there's going to be times that decision might be, I voted a different way.
Sure.
And I have to kind of decide, okay, well, that's going to be a step too far for me. Or, I can agree to disagree and learn from it.
Yeah, I like that. We came back last year. We explained like the results, that we're getting back of some of the things that happened aren't good. But like the body asked for this. Like we said, go look. We didn't hide anything as a convention. Like we were the convention is the people. We want to know. It exists for 2 days. We want to know. So we demanded it. We got the answers. There were people that were hiding stuff, but that's not the convention. Yeah. And so for me, it's still worth it. I love the SBC. The SBC, by and large, has been very kind to me as an individual and to our church. Our local association was super whack, so we didn't. I used to lead. I was like vice moderator back in the day. I have to know Robert's rules and all that stuff. But then they got a little upside down, Yeah. And so
ours is too, man. Ours is too. I'm just kidding.
Well, you're in charge, so it
is my fault.
As much as a DOM, director of missions. What are they called now?
Associational mission strategist.
Okay. Yeah, it's like, I was the vice moderator, like in a former church. Everybody knows me, knows our people. So our church relaunched as a new church. And I said, listen, we're going to be applying. And they were like, don't worry about it. You don't have to, we'll just kind of like, make it. And I'm like, no, we disbanded. We're reconstituting. We are a new church. We need to do it by the book. We want to formally do it. And they're like, all right. So we do it. And so we're doing the interview, and I got the elders, the elder candidates that, basically that are leading the church with me there. And they come after us over election. And and I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, that we're a Reformed Baptist church, and they're coming after us. And by the way, these are guys who actually don't have an opinion on election because it's all mystery to them. But they're coming after us, and I'm like, what are you talking about? We embrace the Baptist faith and message. That's the end of this discussion. Like, if you don't understand how we do reconcile these things in our heads, that's fine. But like, I don't know why you're picking on this. And so they did that afterwards. These guys who were replanting this church with me, they were like, I don't want us to be a part of that. Like they were so like, we don't want to leave the SBC. And these guys were SBC guys for decades. We don't want to leave these people, like, we don't want to be a part of this. They were weird and hostile. And the association began to be a place where it didn't function like it's supposed to. Associations are there for churches. The churches don't exist for the association, and they really reversed that. So the convention, the Southern Baptist Convention, I think really does exist for the churches, but we have to stay on top of that because there are people who maybe, from time to time, we're going to want to reverse that and how they either seek to lead or influence the convention. All right, I got one more question for you, and then we got to wrap it up because I know you have more waffles to eat, more miles to run. Let's say you're a part of a Southern Baptist church, right? You're already in, because it's a whole nother discussion about joining the SBC. But let's say you're a Southern Baptist church, and you've never been involved. You're just kind of doing your thing, being faithful to the Lord, making disciples, and you're feeling like I really probably should get involved, be more responsible with this connection that God has led us to be a part of. What are like the simplest and most important ways for people who have not been invested or connected to actually step into that and be more a part of the convention?
Yeah. I know I don't want to assume that your listeners are ignorant to this. So I'm not saying this like to dumb it down, but I think just walking through what the SBC is,
yeah.
In the case of like in somebody that finds themselves in Collin County, my encouragement would be, hey, every quarter, we've got our executive board meeting. Come and see how the local association of all of these churches, because it's like a microcosm of what then happens at the state level and then at the national level. And so ours does function well. We do have that kind of polity and so forth, very similar, and everything kind of follows the same format. Our annual meeting's the same as like a state convention. So it's like a taste, but it's also something that they can, when somebody would go, and because I would encourage them, my final encouragement is go to the annual meeting as well, the SBC annual meeting. But it's also kind of hard to, in your hands, get a feel for what this is accomplishing. So we can see it, we see the missionary. So that's good. That does help. That's wonderful. But on the local level and to a degree on the state level, you're able to link those arms and do a pregnancy center. Where you can literally not just fund it, but go and volunteer at it. Whereas with missions and so forth, typically you can fund it, and I guess you could do a mission trip and go and serve. Our church has a mission effort in Senegal where we work alongside the IMB and do some stuff there. But you have those options. But really on a local level, things that matter in your area that's going to be different here than it would be in Illinois for you. But for us, whatever those might be, then you can jump in. And so you can get your hands dirty and get involved, not just with your votes or your tithe, just like you would want your people to be involved into your church. So I would say do what you do at your church, but now on the local level. And then to the degree that you're able, the state conventions usually will have, if you're like a vacation Bible school volunteer, they usually have trainings all over the state where go and learn how to do your role better. If it's music, if it's whatever, they have all of that kind of breakout. So there's all these other ways to be involved and receive edification from it. I know our state has the evangelism conference. That's what I think one of the top conferences that are out there. I got in trouble because I skipped it this year. I was just wiped, man. Yeah. But it's great preaching, great practical, and it's like it's here. So hey, go and be fed for a weekend for this thing. And then, of course, the final one is maybe just go take you some popcorn and watch the show. Like, just go see what we do, because there will be the drama. There will be the angry moments, the tense moments where you feel the collective rolling of the eyes when certain people get to the mic. That's just part of it. We also have that at the local church level. Yeah. When so-and-so goes to the mic during a business meeting, you're like, here we go. We didn't clean out the bus on, correctly, or we didn't fill it up correctly. Whatever it might be, it's the same thing, every time. So the same thing happens on the national level, but you also get to see and hear the reports from the seminaries, from the church planting. And my favorite, of course, is the mission sending, where you have the people that come across the stage. They share their testimony, where they're going, some that you can't see or know their name because of where they're going. Yep. And then they usually spread out across, I don't know how we're doing it this year, but they usually will spread out across the crowd, and people will just convene on them. For people like you and me, we usually sit in our seats and just kind of hold our hand up in the general direction because we're introverts. But others, man, they're right up, put their hands on them and start praying.
Baptists, I think overall, Southern Baptists are more touchy on the scale. They're more like
we don't
huggy.
shake hands, we hug.
Yeah. Thanks.
And that's one reason that I'm like, I should be PCA or something. They probably don't hug.
I should be OPC. I'll go hard.
But yeah, that in being able to see, because you see the good, bad, the ugly, but ultimately you're seeing what we're trying to do through this process, and so that's why I think it matters. So yes. Find that person, in your church that maybe has that interest, wants to be involved. Take them, if the pastor is listening to this, take them with you to the next executive board meeting of your association, if it has one, the annual meeting at your state. Let them be involved. Let them know. Make that stuff available to your people to be involved so that they can see what they're contributing to. And then I think take as many people as you can to the annual meeting. Of course, as messengers, but you don't have to be a messenger to go. You can go as a guest. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where I think you get out of it what you put into it. And so I think it's valuable. And for me, it's a chance to see different areas. Like I wouldn't normally go to New Orleans. It's not a place that I would say, hey, today I'm going to go to New Orleans. But for a couple of days, I'm going to eat. I'm going to hang out with people. I'm going to sing. I'm going to hear preaching. I'm going to do all of that kind of stuff and do the business of the SBC along the way. And so it's kind of cool to see the world that way, or see the country that way. Yeah. So
and see Christians from different parts of the country all coming together. Like that's something cool too. I love it. All right, man. So like you guys that are listening, you heard him. If you are in a Southern Baptist church, all right, figure it out. Like talk to somebody. If you're on staff and you don't know, find another pastor who does. Try to get a better grasp on what the Southern Baptist Convention actually is. Like learn the history. I also agree. Go if you're in your local association, go. Right. It's a really great thing to go to the state thing. Now listen, I know if you could, when I go to the state convention, it's been a while. It's pretty cringy. It's just overall, it's pretty cringy. But what's not cringy is the most important thing that's going on there. So it's like you got to get past some of the dressing of things to go like, okay, so they're a little, okay, it's like your parents, like, okay, so yeah, they're style, they're a little out of style, but they're still like some of the best people on the planet. So like, let's respect and let's learn from them. I love that. And by the way, if you can't go to the convention, and I think you should, we stream it now. Like you can actually stay on top of it. So you can do that too. Matt,
and hey, I can't at all oversell how wonderful. I mean, my favorite part after the mission stuff is everything that happens outside of that room. Yeah, totally. And the exhibit hall, out getting a cup of coffee, having a bite to eat, whatever it might be, hanging out, all of that kind of stuff is what makes it worth it for me. Because I've met lifelong friends at annual meetings. Yeah, and so that's just cool. Especially when pastoring can be tough. You're dealing with, and that was kind of our heartbeat with the pastors conference is you got people coming in on cloud nine, their church is thriving. That's very few. You have some barely hanging on. And so a lot of people that are coming to that are in any side of that. And you get to hear, celebrate, mourn, cry, laugh, all of that. That's what matters to me.
I love it, man. Matt, if people want to follow you on social media, I have it right up there on the screen, but if they're listening, what is your handle?
Yeah, on Twitter, it is at M. Henslee for Matt Henslee, at M. Henslee.
All right, Henslee. And you know what? Don't make him block you. Don't make him mute you. Don't be rude. Don't lie about things that are going on, and they get called out by the guy, oh man, it's been a weird week. It's been so weird. It's been so embarrassing. Oh, I get embarrassed sometimes as a Southern Baptist. But then I find guys like you, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not embarrassed anymore because Matt is my bro. I love him. I love what you're doing. Keep eating waffles. Keep running. Keep making disciples. And keep doing the good work with the convention. Matt, we really do appreciate you.
I appreciate you and appreciate the time.
So if you guys want to support our podcast, you know how to do that, right? Subscribe. Just subscribe to everything that's going on that we do. Like you can... You can subscribe to the podcast that comes out on every Monday and Thursday. But if you want to financially support the podcast so that we can actually do more things, you can be a subscriber to All Access. Just scroll down on your player there, your podcast player, look for Support This Podcast, click that link, and off you're going to go, and you can be a part of it. We would love for you to do that. But you can find us on social media at Doc and Devo. Engage us there. Send us messages. Let us know what you want us to talk about, and we will get to it as soon as we can. We appreciate you. Thanks for listening. God bless. Now go back and be a vital part of your local church.